Welcome to the program. Today I shall continue with where we have left last time. Years later, in October 2014, while I was sharing a dwelling in Frankston with my friend Rosemary, we were curious to see the news coverage about Jehovah's Witnesses International Assembly at Etihad Stadium in Melbourne. I knew that my ex-wife would also be there, for as a dedicated witness, she could not miss any such occasion. Before the expected end, I did not hear from Claude, my son, and assumed that he was accommodating his mother at his home. Remember, she would be extremely disturbed if he talked to his father, who she hated bitterly. After she had returned to Perth, he invited me to dinner, for he had apparently missed his dad. However, when he sent a text message to his mother, she was, as expected, very upset, writing immediately about her disgust regarding him talking with a man who spoke to spirits. He was troubled by this and demanded his mother to apologize. Unfortunately, this carried an element of disrespect. Speaking of Jehovah's Witnesses, one specific observation on my part over the years clearly showed me that they were the type of people who never desired to encourage their members to think for themselves, applying psychological manipulation. One is led to believe that all exterior thoughts experienced are generated by an evil force to stop them from worshipping Jehovah, even leading one to question his authority. One is never encouraged to question their allegedly God-chosen organization. The witnesses enslaved to their so-called theocratic governing body are guided to only study the wisdom selectively chosen and prepared by the members of Bethel in the US. If they tell you to jump, you are expected to ask how high. Since the days of their founders, you are only encouraged to study what they see fit. You dare not think outside the square, adhering only to the study of the Holy Scriptures as they interpret. Some of the principles therein are always presented as being reserved only to Jehovah's Witnesses and not practiced by the pagan Christians and all other belief systems in the world. Indeed, they have created a government within their own self-structured system of operations, wherein the entire world of humanity is judged as a negative entity from which they are separated. God's love is presented under a completely different light, as if they are the only beholders of that love and truth, denying all the good deeds other benevolent organizations do. Consider the Salvation Army and others. Jehovah's Witnesses entrap all their adherers to the Watchtower Society, completely under a spell, never to search into knowledge, freely available to everyone through current trends of communication, like the internet or other social media, for fear of finding something new and different, perhaps even for fear of their actual beginnings being discovered. Such discoveries are considered as temptations from Satan, the devil, and you are emphatically discouraged from finding out the real truth. That is also why they label them as the devil's tools, and therefore evil, placed in front of your eyes to subject you to lies, to turn you away from the truth, as presented under the banner of their governing body. Christ has also gained a different character under Jehovah's Witness teachings, not necessarily as the Bible explains. The Bible was written by men of great intelligence and imagination centuries ago. Jehovah's Witnesses do not want you to question the Spirit, never attempting to seek wisdom outside their teachings, certainly undermining your intelligence, your capacity to think, and the years of study you might have had. Your profession and position within society has no value as far as they are concerned, for as they endlessly preach, you simply need to obey and believe in what they teach you through their book publishing company, the Watchtower and Tract Society, allegedly the only illumined organization of God, without question. They do all the thinking for you. Your entire life, the way you eat and drink, lie down and sleep, your body and your thoughts are controlled. Even your sex life in the bedroom needs to be supervised. If you commit adultery, you will either be disciplined or disfellowshipped. It gets even better. Anal or oral sex will only attract theocratic advice, but will not attract shunning or disfellowshipment, unlike the greatest sin of questioning the Spirit, and the list goes on, which their congregations usually have no idea about. Remember, whatever is not included in their Bible does not count. You are separated in every conceivable way from almost all aspects of society. If you notice, even all Jehovah's Witness children at school are separated from activities approved by the education authorities. They are never encouraged to share them, which would prepare them for life. When examining their secretive activities regarding child abuse cases, they keep it hidden at all costs in order to keep their name unblemished, thereby keeping their children isolated. In fact, if you are a member of their organization, you will never be encouraged to excel or gain financial freedom, adhering to the moral codes of human society you are part of. Everything is considered as a threat against your allegedly God-approved survival after Armageddon, the end of the world, which was predicted to occur in 1914. But that year was conveniently changed to signify the beginning of Christ's invisible rulership. After all, he was the everlasting King, who was no other than Archangel Michael, according to Jehovah's Witness teachings. Have they also been psychically told about it? One wonders. But as their governing body now declares that they are not inspired of God. As one discovers through research in the early beginnings of their organization, one is informed that they were heavily involved in spiritual seances and Freemasonry. Why is their governing body discouraging members from finding out the real truth about themselves? Perhaps they should visit the grave of their founder near the Masonic Lodge, close to their headquarters, for it is a pyramid with Freemasonry emblems carved on it. In fact, if familiar, reading Masonry literature is like reading Jehovah's Witness publications, which replicate the principles presented therein with their own twist. They would only deny the fact that their organization is an apostate version of that which they diligently preach against. All those international assemblies, which cost millions of dollars to stage, are to encourage you to attend and discover the alleged unity and brotherhood they claim to represent as the real characteristics of Jehovah's Witnesses. Even though it is a lie, when it is presented in a tantalizing manner, it may become your truth, for it was spoken of by the faithful elect. You are invited to attend the well-staged and endlessly repeated lectures, bypassing your own personal interests. You are now under their hypnotic conditioning. For a moment of bliss, when the light turns on, you are sucked in, probably symbolizing your dedication to Jehovah through staged baptism ceremonies after an extensive study of the Bible with them. A misconstrued concept becomes your truth after endlessly being repeated. There are cults which are devoted to Satan worship, and the witnesses actually identify their God with a name which is also used as the divine name of one of the devils. Those who follow the Hebrew Bible never use the name Tetragrammaton, YHWH, or Yahweh, in the Old Testament, which is so holy that it should never be uttered by any man. The Hebrew Bible utilizes Adonai Elohim instead, although the holy name is included in the scriptures. As I have already made mention of my previous experiences, I also had my share of the witnesses, recalling memories of my early teenage years when I was introduced to them by one of my cousins. They all presented themselves as being the most polite, caring, and joyful to be around type of people. When one showed any interest in getting to know them better, there were more smiles and an obvious increase in their friendliness, opening their doors wide to the curious seeker to study the Bible with them. I found myself befriended with one of their elders and his close associates while in Ankara. They explained their stories in a tantalizing manner, using some US-produced books like Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, and their Watchtower magazines, which did not have any covers. As I have already mentioned in more details, they were translated into Turkish and printed on extremely thin rice paper. They were sent out from all corners of the world by other witnesses to those living in Turkey. Such literature was considered as propaganda material for missionary work, and activities of this nature were strictly forbidden under Turkish law. Any type of missionary work from a Christian background was severely punishable, as it still is, according to information. Interestingly, the country boasts of being a true democratic nation. One wonders if they are still following the guidelines originally introduced by their great leader Atatürk. Jehovah's Witnesses were operating undercover when I was introduced to them. They were meeting at each other's homes as if visiting friends, ever ready to pretend they were just having a family gathering when the police raided their homes. I also experienced such a raid and saw how people were treated like criminals. Their ministering elder taken into custody and later jailed for a short period of time. All this was rather interesting to a young man. Besides, I was now amongst people who accepted me as their friend and was not ridiculed because of the alleged racial background I belonged to or my outlandish name and looks, so I thought. However, by observation alone, it was very unusual to see the witnesses living in fear, exercising caution. On the other hand, in Turkey, I was a member of a minority group of people belonging to a different race, completely unwanted, disliked, and rejected by their society. The teachings of witnesses consisted of moral codes as prescribed in their Bible. The highly emphasized importance of seeking Jehovah's kingdom and the establishment of the governing body, starting with their founders, Charles Taze Russell, and all their presidents who acted similarly to the Pope, like Rutherford, a retired lawyer who later declared himself a judge. We were incessantly warned about the year 1975 as most definitely being the end of our days on Earth. We were therefore discouraged from undertaking any study in academia, start a business, or a family before Armageddon. But as per my nature, I desired to do things differently. Sometimes I was told by friends and relations that I seemed to do the opposite of everything. However, I now understand that this characteristic of mine was extremely beneficial for my developing personality. During those days, my staying in Ankara was becoming increasingly unpleasant, whilst also intolerable, unacceptable to the native population. I was determined to remain different. Their educational system and other authorities presented complete opposition to anybody belonging to a minority race surviving amongst them, and all opportunities were denied to excel in any field, let alone academically. There are many examples of this, and I do not wish to include them here, for much has already been said. The truth of the matter is that if one wanted to do anything worthwhile in Turkey, one had to pretend to live a life like the native citizens of the country by changing one's identity and name. Although Turkey, or Türkiye, proclaims itself to be a thoroughly democratic country allowing freedom of speech and belief systems, but different rules seem to apply for all human rights related issues. At this point, I intend to make a reasonably short resume of my story. However, if you desire, you may simply discard this segment and go to the next chapter or part. Remember, I was befriended with a small number of people who initially accepted me as a human being. Some were from the same background as me, and others had overseas connections, and it was when the light was turned on that I began to search into ways of escaping from the everlasting ridicule and bullying tactics by traveling into another country, never to return back. Although I have written a more detailed account in this regard, I feel the need to make mention of it briefly here before concluding. The country I was staying in at the time did not accept me or my parents as worthy human beings, for we were still bitterly hated since the war years. I needed to make my way out of this into a more tolerant, accepting, and freedom-loving community where there was no discrimination, and in fact, anywhere would do. All I wanted to do was to work doing a suitable job while studying at one of the European universities. That would give me a chance to learn other languages. My father often recited his friend Martin's words that a language was like a single man, but that several languages were like a few people, thereby expanding one's horizons. The opportunity I ardently desired arose when a married couple from Germany came to Turkey visiting my friends, who were Jehovah's Witnesses. I suppose, feeling as though I had fallen into a bottomless pit, I grasped that opportunity and started inquiring about my chances of getting away from Turkey, finding accommodation, part-time employment, and entering the education system elsewhere. Anybody who had fallen into the mire would even grab hold on the sharpest blade to get out of danger. I was not exaggerating my situation, and seeing many others in a similar predicament left me with no choice. At first, all my dreams in this regard appeared impossible, but soon after, I was invited to go to Germany on a one-way ticket, which the German couple provided for me to repay later. They offered me accommodation and even found me a job. From then on, many things became more interesting. However, shortly before my journey, the Turkish military invited me for conscription service, as they did with all young men around my age. Since they discovered that I was intending to study in Europe, they prepared their report accordingly so that when I returned, that is, if I returned, I could continue with a short conscription service. After all those interviews and intolerable medical exams, I was most definitely unwilling to return. Here was a wonderful opportunity and a great plan, but the issues I had to deal with in regard to my supposed involvement with Jehovah's Witnesses were going to present a few unwelcome challenges. I hoped one could put up or deal with it somehow without realizing their potentials and true nature of operations. It was also very hard for my mother to lose me for a while, but as she declared, it was much better for me to get away and become somebody in the near future. Hopefully, I have not disappointed her. However, the idea of leaving her all alone with my father and brother was very difficult to swallow. When living in Germany, I discovered that my so-called friends were overly keen to control my every move and every thought under very strict rules and regulations based upon Jehovah's Witness dictates. Due to me being very friendly with all others, no matter what background they belonged to or what they believed in, those witness friends have seen me as a baptized member of their organization without question, for after all, genuinely friendly and helpful people can only be Jehovah's Witnesses. And remember, the outside world is under the control of the great serpent, the devil. Is it not? The witnesses are encouraged to think in these terms, bypassing the reality of good and charitable people around the globe. Obviously, members of the organization in Ankara had considered me as one of theirs, and my supposed dedication to their faith was never questioned. I could never declare my truth to them, for I was never given any opportunity to speak, and so I kept playing my secret role. It was hard for me who was studying and discovering more about the real truth in regard to medicine and the workings of the human mind, while being forced into pretense of being one of the Jehovah's Witness slaves. My ex-wife, who was my then girlfriend, whom I dearly loved, was not a baptized member of their religious order when we first met. But she was studying the Bible with them. In my early days in Germany, none of them wanted to know about my deepest desire to continue with my education after supposedly passing a number of academic exams to be accepted by one of their highly reputable universities. I knew that in Ankara I would never be recognized or given any chance to advance with my family background, and I had a huge dilemma. I could never explain to my friends at whose dwelling I was housed that what they thought in regard to my full-time employment was in reality a part-time job, and most of my days were spent studying for my university degrees. Remember, almost all witnesses are thoroughly against any type of academic achievement on this side of Armageddon. A certain amount of time was also needed to spend with them allegedly studying their Bible, attending their regular weekend meetings, and listening to long, boring talks presented in their kingdom halls. A while later, my witness friends, who originated from East Germany, the country being divided into East and West at the time, migrated to the southernmost state of Tasmania, Australia. The girl I loved and I were going out more often. I was glad that I had not started any relationship with Sybil, the girl the Strobachs had previously introduced me to. Sybil was inflicted with extreme restrictions by her witness parents, who disciplined her harshly. Due to this, she developed psychiatric abnormalities and later committed suicide by hanging herself, as I was told. Her extremely strict and overly fanatical parents blamed the psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, and everybody involved in her treatment. They classified as demonic practices. My friends at whose dwelling I was housed believed that if I could be somehow interested in marrying this girl, her problems would be eased, for they were able to see how those Jehovah's Witness parents' dogmatic practices were dangerous and mentally harming their daughter. Even then, the nervous breakdowns many witnesses experience in their lives were clearly evident. Sybil's problem was most certainly caused by the Jehovah's Witness lifestyle. However, being an inexperienced young man, I was in love with the other girl I met at one of their gatherings, and did not want to have anything to do with civil. Whenever I wanted to see the Witness brothers my future wife was studying the Bible with, they strictly barred me from entering. I was stunned but did not overly concern myself yet. I was very much surprised about her eagerness to talk about nothing else other than the truth she learned from those brothers. It was so bad that one could not speak about anything else other than the Bible. I was blind to the warning signals about what could happen in the near future. Soon after, she was completely absorbed into their truth and turned against the entire world, just like all other witnesses are. She could no longer see anything nice in the world and never wanted to participate in any of the world's activities, for they were deemed to be demonic and under control of the all-powerful devil. We never celebrated anything or wished well to anybody for Christmas, New Year, or birthdays. I drifted into an oblivion, hoping that things might improve and one could discover new interests and hobbies. We could never talk about anything else other than the kingdom of Jehovah, the New World Order, Armageddon, and the wickedness of the world. To be truly happy with her, I had to bypass all my interests in medicine, music, astronomy, and photography whenever I was with her. I endured it all for love's sake. Eventually, we got married with great expectations. All my other friends and even my parents were replaced by members of Jehovah's Witnesses with their biased viewpoints about the world and everything in it, education and art. I, on the other hand, became more and more a spiritually secluded and internalized man. During this period of my life, I could only enjoy things like music discreetly using a pair of headphones, although that was also considered as an intrusion, stopping us from forever thinking about nothing else other than God's kingdom and house-to-house preaching activities. I went along with it, primarily to please my wife, while still cautiously and discreetly conducting my academic studies. Like her many friends, she forever advised me that I should only be concerned in looking after my family, doing simple laboring jobs, and dedicating my entire life to serving Jehovah as dictated by their headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. We attended a number of international and district assemblies in different venues, different cities, and different parts of Europe. However, wherever we have been was of no value, for we have not seen anything other than attending the large stadiums hired by their organization for vast sums of money. These were also venues where new students who had learned all about the Bible as interpreted by the witnesses were encouraged to symbolize their dedication to Jehovah through public baptism ceremonies. We were subjected to listening to everlastingly repeated concepts and principles as presented in their teachings by members of their governing body. We shall continue with this by the next episode. Until then, keep well, keep smiling, and be happy. Thank you.